your tractor won't start. Were those insulated channel locks or what?
Well, I'm glad the camera was rolling for that.
Hey, good morning, guys. It's sausage day again, late February, and it's another amazing day, cold and rainy. So today we actually moved sausage out to our house. So we've just got everything set up here at the house. You guys have seen sausage. I'll link my playlist from last year about how we make all the sausage. Last year we made 1,200 pounds. Today we're making 800 pounds. But today we're doing something a little different, which is we're gonna make pannas today. So that's what this video is gonna be about, is making pannas.
So what even is pannas? It's a cornmeal and flour based dough bread. Not really sure how you call it. I know the Midwesterners call it scrapple. But basically you boil meat, bones, and make a good broth, and then you cook that broth with some flour and cornmeal. So we use pork. This hog was shot the night before, but some people use Boston butts or bone-in hams or whatever you can get your hands on. Here we're also throwing in some pork rinds, some pork like skin, and that just ups the fat content in the broth and makes it really extra creamy. A lot of that extra fat. So here we've thrown in that extra fat, and I'm just stirring it up, and we're boiling this meat. And essentially what you're going to do is this meat boiled for hours. I mean, 4, 5, 6 hours. And occasionally what we would do is just open it up and check on it, give it a good stir, make sure everything was getting cooked. And you basically want to boil this meat until it's essentially cooked. We're going to pick it off the bone. It doesn't have to be fall off the bone status, but you want to make sure that it is all cooked and you don't have any raw meat in there. And don't be afraid to throw the head in there and, you know, whatever other stuff you have, because it all just adds, all that stuff on the head is just fat basically. And it's really good meat, the cheeks and stuff. So you definitely want to keep all that in your pannas, and you want to just season this broth to your taste. But keep in mind that you're going to be adding a lot of unseasoned flour and cornmeal later on. So just keep that in mind. You might want to go a little bit heavier than you otherwise would. Mr. Charlie Moore is like the pannas master, and he's the gentleman in the gray jacket here. He's fishing out a piece of meat, and what we're going to do is we're going to taste test this meat. It basically is like a pot roast almost. And you're just going to want to taste test this, check it for doneness, and kind of make sure that the meat is cooked through. So here I am, I'm just grabbing a piece. I'm going to pop it in my mouth, and yeah, good stuff. Once all your meat's cooked, you're going to scrape out the bones. It's okay if you leave small parts of meat in there. You're going to put the meat back in anyways, but you want to make sure you get all the big chunks of meat and all the bones. And here we have a little sieve that we're using to get all that stuff out. We're putting it into pots so we can take it over to the table. Just take your time and make sure that you get all the bones and stuff out, because it's a really nasty surprise when you leave a bone in there and you go to cut your pannas, or even, God forbid, eat it, and you break a tooth on a bone or something. It's really nasty. So just take your time, use some patience, and that broth is looking pretty good.
Yeah, just start getting the bottom, you know, trying to, any bones that you find.
Y'all are just deboning?
Yeah, we go through, now that it's all boiled, you actually pull all the meat out of the, you know, like the jowls and stuff. There's, you know, like here around that eye socket, you see all that, that's all meat. And that goes in our pannas. But it's hot. And then that's the tongue, and that will go in there too.
Yeah.
I'll skin that, but it's so hot right now, it's hard to do.
Yeah, you can see all that steam.
But you can see all that meat that was just on the bone.
It smells delicious.
it just falls off once it's cooked.
A few times, you don't need any hand softener.
Protein.
That's enough bone.
So the old guys were deboning the Pannas while the young fellows were up at the smokehouse hanging all the sausage we made. So basically they're just going through all the meat that we pulled out of the broth, and they're just making sure that they get all the bones out. And it's really important to get all the bones out. Obviously, it doesn't belong in the Pannas, but this is also just a chance to make sure that, you know, nothing else goes in there that you don't want it to go into, because once you're done with this step, you're going to dump it all back together and you're going to start making Pannas. I do want to give a shout out to Charlie Moore here, the gentleman in the gray coat. He makes Pannas all by himself, and as you guys will see here in a little bit, it is a labor-intensive process. I don't know how he does it. My arms were killing me after rowing, but he came over and he kind of showed us how he does it. And he makes this stuff and just gives it away or makes little small batches. So he's the real MVP. What we're doing here is we're just chopping up the meat. We don't want any big old honking chunks of meat in there. So we want sort of like a little bit of a finer shredded, like chopped beef sort of texture to it. So that's all we're doing here. Final bone check here. Like I said, just take your time, have some patience. The ratio we want to shoot for on this is 3 cornmeal, 1 flour, and Charlie's just mixing it in this bucket here, and he's sort of layering it in there so it's a little bit pre-mixed. If you have the ability to, or if you're making a smaller batch, mix it all together, and then as you dump it in, you're not going to dump it in all at once. You're going to sprinkle it in like a couple handfuls and then stir. Sprinkle in and then stir.
Are y'all removing it because it's too much?
Break it down into 2 batches.
Breaking it down into 2 batches.
We split our Pannas into 2 batches, but here you're seeing Charlie slowly add cornmeal. Now this is actually still pretty soupy. The first like several handfuls are just going into straight broth, so nothing really interesting here. But as you continue to add, you should start to see it get a little more doughy, and it start to sort of roll off the sides of the pot. the stirs, you want to make sure that you're constantly stirring, because if the flour and the broth stay on the side of the pot, it'll actually burn. When it starts to look nice and doughy like it does here, you know you're about there. You don't really need to add any more flour in. You kind of just need to let it cook. That flour and that cornmeal is actually cooking right now in that broth up against the hot sides of that kettle. So just keep stirring, and when it starts to look like dough, literally like dough, you know you're good.
That's pretty good. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Shut the fire off.
And they're going to turn the fire off. Let it cool.
Put the lid on and let it steam just a little bit.
I'm going to let it steam just a little bit.
Now that you're done cooking your pannas, you just have to transfer it into pans to cool. I like making pannas when it's about the size of like a McDonald's hash brown patty. So that's pretty much the like height that we go, and then we'll cut it thin into slices and fry it. Some people eat it with eggs, and some people eat it with maple syrup like a pancake. I think pannas taste best when it's freshly cooked like this. I was just walking around pulling little chunks out of the pot and eating it right out of the hot pot. But obviously we're going to cool it down and cut it into bricks and then freeze it. But go ahead, give it a try. Pannas is really fun. It's like a deconstructed tamale almost. And you guys can flavor it and season it however you want. Go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know how you get on if you try to make some yourself. I think it's a really cool little thing. You can make a small batch with whatever bones you have laying around. If you make a Thanksgiving ham or something, take that bone and boil it up and make you some pannas, a little small batch of pannas, and see how that goes. They did split the batch, so the young bucks actually had a chance to work their arms off. So in the end, the old guys got their revenge.
Make it about 2 inches thick.
2 inches thick.
Look what we shows up. Oh good, they can stir that next gun